Hey, Daniel from the 7Cs. Hope you're doing fantastically well. Man, I've been on the Holt Bladeworks kick lately, and I want to bring to you guys today these two guys. Now, if you are familiar with the Holt Bladeworks, this one is the Holt Specter, the one at the bottom. This is the first folding knife model that they came out with few years ago. They had several kind of evolutions. I believe there was like V1, 2, 3, and then a 4, and then they kind of retired this model. This one's a V4, and then this is their latest model, the Renegade. And so we kind of have these bookends, right? You got the first model and then you got the latest model, and from what I'm aware of, they're actually working on two other models that are going to be coming in the near future. I don't know when, but I thought it'd be really cool to kind of do like a compare and contrast of these two knives and kind of see their evolution, the refinements that they've made over the years. Now, I've had several Holt Bladeworks in my collection. I've had the Holt Haptic. That was actually my first Holt that I got, and that was maybe about 2 years ago or so. I don't recall if I made a video. I don't think I made a video about it because it didn't really last that long in my collection. I ended up selling it a few days later because I don't know, I wasn't really jiving with that model. But then the second one I got was the Spectre. It was the V3. And then I ended up selling that one. I actually really loved that knife. After I sold that V3, I was like, man, I need to get another Spectre in, and that's how I ended up getting the V4, which is that inset liner lock. And then actually I ended up getting the Renegade before I got the Spectre. So I kind of mixed up the order. I actually got the Renegade, and then I got the V3, and then I got the V4. And so I feel like I kind of have a good grasp of kind of the range of knives that Holt Bladeworks they've come out with so far. The only knife I haven't really tried is the Morpheus, but I've heard really great things about it. I would say they probably sit somewhere in the middle between this one and that one in terms of like the history, and then in terms of the size, right? So with that being said, the reason why I feel like it would be a really good contrast and comparison between these two knives is because this is really their first foray into their folding knife kind of world. I believe Holt Bladeworks started with fixed blade knives. If I'm not mistaken, I may be wrong, but I believe that's where they started off with, and then they came out with the Spectre. Now, when the Spectre kind of landed on the scene, it made a huge splash. Everyone absolutely loved it. Well, I don't want to say everyone, but I'll say most of us knife enthusiasts really, really loved the Spectre, and they were like the hottest thing for a while. The secondary market on these guys were crazy. I think it's kind of died down in terms of it's now, I feel like it's a little bit more reasonable. I think you could pick one of these guys up in the $900 to $1,000 range, which is, I think, a hovering around table price, if I'm not mistaken. Now, the Renegade's a little bit harder to get because they're not making a lot of, I mean, they are making these. They're still making the Renegade, not so much a Spectre. But when the Renegade does come out, they only come out like, a handful at a time, and they go really fast. Now, just right off the bat, I will say that the Spectre really did set the bar in terms of, I mean, they can't really, the only way to go is up from the Spectre, to be honest. They made such a huge statement with this knife. Like, I mean, even now in 2024, to me, they still run with the very best of them out there, in terms of fit and finish, the action is just crazy awesome. Still so good. Even in today's standard, I would say it's at the top tier of things. The detent is just absolutely dialed in. This has the adjustable detent system with that really cool detent nub, kind of that integrated detent nub system that just, oh my god, the action on this is awesome. And so I believe this is serial number 1199 or 1149 if I'm not mistaken. So this is at the towards the back end before they retired it. I believe they retired this at somewhere around 1200 or so. So this is kind of like in the last kind of last batch of Spectres that they made before they retired. Now this is Renegade number 17. So this is, I would say, kind of towards the beginning of the whole Renegade run. I don't know what serial number they're at now, but I believe they're probably in the 50s or maybe kind of going towards the hundreds. But right off the bat, I mean, just the evolution from this to this is just so amazing. In terms of the action, let me start off with the action. The action on these two are very, very comparable, but I think the action on this is more closely resembling, I think, the V2 or the V3. Is very clickety clackety, and from what I've heard, the V2 is very much has that kind of that click clack action. So I think the action is very akin to the V2, but amazing, just ridiculous action. Absolutely love it. This is more of a thunk action. The V4s are kind of known for that. It's more of a thunk action, which is still very satisfying, but it's not as clickety clackety as the V2 or the V3s. But you know, between the V3 and the V4, I've had both of them. I actually prefer the action of the V4. I know that's kind of not the popular opinion. I think most people like the V2 and then the V3 and then the V1 and then the V4. But the V4 kind of tends to land on the back end in terms of people's preference on action. This is I love the action on the V4. It's just awesome. So I will say that in terms of the action, I think they've kind of modeled it after the V2. In terms of the fit and finish and craftsmanship, they're very, very similar, but I definitely do see an improvement on the Renegade. They're just doing a lot more of this dual contrast milling pattern happening. Now, this is particular to my knife. I know they have other Renegades have different milling patterns, but check that out. You got this this diamond pattern, and then you got these beautiful lines. So they definitely learned a thing or two in terms of their machining capability. Just check out, it's just such clean milling work happening all over the place. You know, just everything is just flush, everything's lined up. Just absolutely beautiful. So I think there's a little bit more complex milling going on the Renegade, and of course you got this awesome this pivot thing going on. I believe there's a captured pivot system versus the Spectre is a free spinning pivot. But honestly, it's not difficult at all to take this thing apart. You know, I believe these are T15s and then T8s, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, you do need two bits to take out the pivot. Versus, I believe, the Renegade, really, yeah. I mean, just by looking at it, you just need that one. I love a captured pivot system. It just makes it a little bit easier if you want to break down the knife and put it back together. So that's that. I definitely do see evolution in terms of how they've designed the pivot. I absolutely love this captured pivot system. I believe this is a T15, and then they kept the T8, and I love that. Anytime they give us you know, these pivots that are really robust, there's just less chance of us jacking up the pivots and the screws for whatever reason. But looking even at this, the milling, even though this is just one pattern, it's still just absolutely gorgeous. Check out that. I mean, from the jump, their milling capability has just been so impressive, you know. And then on the V4, that's when they started to mill the pocket clip to match the milling pattern on the handle, which is absolutely just, it's just above and beyond. They take it a step above. They don't have to do that in the V3s and below. They kept it blank, but just to add that additional milling pattern on the pocket clip is just very special. Everything is lined up here. I feel like the Spectre was really, even though it's honestly a perfect knife, I think they took everything that they learned from manufacturing the Spectre and they really incorporated it into the haptic, the Morpheus, and now the Renegade. I mean, this is really everything that I think all the kind of failures, lessons learned from the Spectre, they really adapted it into their later models, like another example, you could see they start to incorporate that back spacer with that little kind of that visual cue to see if your blade is centered. You see it on right there as well. This thing is just dead center, just beautifully done. Now another difference between these two models is in the blade. Now, this is a full flat grind blade, which I think for just everyday EDC utility, performance-wise, is just perfect. It's great. No, it's just easy to sharpen. It goes through materials, well, and it's just a very just standard, just a time-tested, blade grind. Now, in the Renegade, they opted for a really nicely done hollow grind, and to me, out of all the blade grind, like the blade grinds that I love, is the hollow grind, because this thing, really preserves the thickness of the spine, and then it tapers down to a really nice cutting edge. And on the Renegade, they did this so well, and so you'll see kind of here. Full flat on the Spectre, and then really nicely done aggressive hollow grind on the Renegade. Both cut very well. If I had to kind of choose which one cuts better, I think the Renegade cuts a little bit better, but honestly, it's just so hard to tell because they both cut very, very well. All right. Here you do see they both have that inset liner lock going on. Now I did notice that both of them are milled out on the inside. It might be a little bit hard to see. Yeah, you'll see it also in the Spectre, but I feel like the milling, the internal milling and the finishing on the Renegade's a little bit more nicely finished. I just wish I had better lighting. I'm sorry, guys. It's a little bit hard to tell. But just take it from me. Just in person, it's definitely a little bit more nicely finished on the inside. And also, here on the Spectre, the inset liner lock is secured with a screw right there, and then it kind of wraps around the pivot system. So it has like kind of 2 points of contact to secure that inset liner lock, versus the Renegade actually looks like it has 3 points. It has it's screwed right there in the middle, and then there's a screw at the end, and then I believe it also then is secured around that pivot system as well. So in terms of, I think, design superiority, I think the Renegade's a little bit more superior in terms of how the inset liner lock has been designed and executed. But honestly, in real world use, I don't think any of these will fail. I mean, of course it could fail, but I think for normal everyday use, like these two are just perfectly designed to be able to withstand your EDC tasks. In terms of blade finish, which is interesting, so both of them are like a stone wash. I believe it's a 1.0 stone wash finish, but I feel like the Renegade stone washing finish is a little bit more reflective than the Spectre, as you can maybe see or maybe not see. But just in person, this looks a little bit more polished. It's a little bit more reflective than the Spectre. All right. Yeah. Now, as you can see, another obvious difference is just the handle profile, right? I'm a sucker for like this plain, this neutral kind of handle shape, which is very comfortable in all different types of grips, right? Now, the Renegade is very, very comfortable as well in that traditional kind of grip, as you can see. It is also fairly comfortable actually in that pull cut grip as well. I do feel a little bit of that pocket clip, but no biggie. And then if I do like an overhand, this feels actually fairly comfortable. Yeah, so even though this handle may seem like it's only comfortable in kind of one grip, it's actually very versatile. So it's really cool how they kind of pulled off this design element, because yeah, it's a very versatile like handle design that will accommodate a lot of different grips. I will say the same for the Spectre. I think in terms of this is, I think, even a little bit more accommodating because it is such a neutral handle shape, and it is a little bit thinner, so there's like less kind of these obtuse angles going on. So it's a little bit more comfortable. But both of them, I'll say honestly, they're both very comfortable. Now, what else can I say? I mean, guys, both of these knives have been just so impressive. Like, I honestly can't believe Holt Bladeworks came out with the Spectre as like their first like folding knife, because man, they really set the bar. Excuse me. Like, they really did. It's just they wanted to really make a statement to the knife community, and they really did with the Spectre. To me, it is still such an impressive knife. I've used it, carried it. I recently went on a road trip, and I ended up rocking this guy for a few days, and it was just amazing. But yeah, the Renegade is a worthy successor to the Spectre in every respect. I mean, man, I could really tell they really took the lessons learned from the Spectre, and they really incorporated it into the Renegade in a very tasteful way, and so it's not, I mean, obviously it's not the same knife, right? But I would say it's like a really good evolution of the Spectre, in that, yeah, they've taken the best of the Spectre and they've put it into the Renegade. So those are my thoughts. Would love to hear yours. Now, if I had to choose between one or the other, what would it be? That's a really hard choice, because they're both very versatile, very high just quality, awesome, addictive, action, fit and finish is top notch. So gosh, if I had to choose one knife for the rest of my life between these two, I think the Spectre wins by a hair. To me, the Spectre is like the perfect size. It has a really low profile footprint in the pocket. It just, to me, visually, I like how this looks a little bit more than this, even though this is a very sexy knife. But yeah, this knife to me really does it. Just visually, the action is just stupid fun, stupid awesome. And actually, honestly, I love that lion head logo. I know some people don't like logos on their blades and whatnot, but man, Holt Bladeworks, they've done it very tastefully, in that they just put a little, the steel indicator right there, and then the lion head logo, and that is just, to me, awesome. Yeah, I love lion heads, man. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so that is my take on these two phenomenal knives. I think this would win by hair, but you cannot go wrong with the Renegade. Man, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you have any questions, drop them down below, and I will talk to you guys soon.